There is no such thing as alien mind or alien agenda. The paradigm of multiple imperatives and needs. There have been books published on the alien agenda and their mind, penetrating their mind, and how they think has been a favorite subject of UFO investigative writers, from Jim Marrs to Richard Boylan. An unspoken assumption of such writers appears to be that there is a monolithic alien mind and alien agenda, as though the only aliens here are the large-eyed, gray shorts, the so-called Zeddy Greys. Marrs, already in contact with ex-military remote viewers, was the wiser. He knew about the SAMS and about the relocated ones from northeastern Peru. David Jacobs is most pessimistic, believing we are doomed as a species. See his book, The Threat, What the Aliens Really Want, and How They Plan to Get It, Simon Andamp, Schuster, 1998. Nonetheless, there is no such thing as a monolithic alien agenda or alien mind. Instead, we need to train ourselves to see them as a host of life forms from different origin and bearing individual group imperatives, priorities, and needs. Jacobs makes mention of 4 initiatives involving aliens: an abduction program, a breeding program, an hybridization program, and an integration program. Yes, they are all there, with some being actively supported and with the participation of non-governmental organizations as well. The reasons for this unusual cooperation is not what Jacobs attributes to aliens and his expectations that they will take over the planet. It is a bit more complicated than that. In Chapter 33, I will expand considerably more on the substance underlying the reasons for the seemingly unusual cooperation between extraterrestrial biokinds on and in near-Earth space. In this chapter, I would like to explore the dynamics that generate this cooperation and the ongoing results of it. At the underlying center of it all lays a commonality of extraterrestrial group imperatives associated with the upcoming tumultuous years we will experience here on Earth. The event in question is the passage of the Planet X horde of astronomical objects inside the solar system's life belt. The first 4, or inner, planets. Why would such an event be of any significance and importance to extraterrestrial groups? Fair question. The answer becomes obvious upon gaining some understanding of the importance of Earth to their own survival and well-being. Earth, as it happens to be the nearest planet for them, is not only the site of an evolving, developing biokind with immense potential to misuse and mismanage not only our own planetary resources, but also affect the intrinsic integrity of space-time itself. The latter reason will become available, intelligible, understandable, and obvious in later chapters, particularly those that touch upon the technologies now available to us already, which can cause severe problems to the galactic ecology and integrity of space-time. This may be a bit confusing at this juncture, but I will beg your indulgence in the matter and ask you to follow along and move onward to get the necessary information to understand what is being said here. It so happens to then be that they, too, rely upon the Earth for much of their foodstuff and sustenance, albeit mostly for raw materials. It is then literally in their best interest to assist, threaten, cajole, advise, instruct, and guide us humans on Earth to care for the ecologic diversity and abundance of biomatter, which also provides them with some degree of sustenance. The focus of their advice to us, sometimes delivered as veiled threats of onerous consequences, and general guidance, is for us to find ways to wrest control away from economic, military, and political elites over the means of production, industrial, and manufacturing capacities of our planet. Easier said than done, to be sure, but this is a central theme of much of what contact cells spend time on. It is also one of the reasons for some of the groups having entered into economic enterprise relationships in several developing and underdeveloped countries. We are sure this is known in the GRID, the coalition of corporate, governmental, institutional, and military forces that shape the destiny of this planet. But there is little they can do to stop it, because they will do what they want, often in contravention to previously existing agreements. This kind of action driven by what, from a human viewpoint, wounds our trust and fairness sensibilities is actually very much in keeping with what we have come to call their imperatives. Groups have argued at the conference table that they have had to break understandings often with official and governmental institutions with whom they had them, and begged those human non-Gevorg representatives at the annual conference to understand them by understanding their experiences while here, but from their point of view, not ours. This is what prompted us to develop a different paradigm for understanding and dealing with them, the paradigm of imperatives and concomitant needs. Thus, just as they too have much to learn about us as well, even if many on the ground are careful and studious observers of our conscience. The ecologic prism for evaluating the human biokind is not all there is to us, and this has been communicated to all of those present at the annual conference table time and again. Thus, the usefulness and need for these annual gatherings. Once we move past the stridency of perceived threat and differences in mindsets and thinking modalities, the gain in interconnecting understanding increases rapidly. So also trust becomes the amplifying coin of access to them, as most groups at the table were said to also highly value trust. In a manner of speaking, the process is a kind of zero-sum game, where all the losses and all the gains are zero. But it is not a zero of nothingness. Rather, those at the table were said to regard it as a zero of comfortable give and take to a point of consensus agreement on things. As our representative once explained during his personal report to our membership, it takes a very fluid intelligence to stay with the ebb and flow of things during the course of the conference, and to grasp from the interconnecting mind flow from one to another what each and all brought to the table and desired to walk away with from the table. There are, however, some stark exceptions to this type of mutual confidence building and zero-sum relating across the board. The exceptions are said to be those from the Zeti planets and the extragalactic grays. Even the so-called verdants, who have attended the conferences on occasion, were said to use a kind of zero-sum approach to the attending conferees, although according to our representative, this group has often, too, been quite explicit about their imperatives, plans, and expectations. It is apparent from the post-conference reports that, whenever they attended, their harangues and appeals fell on deaf human ears, in spite of promises of rewards and personal elevation upon return to home countries. What is interesting is that rejection seemed to not be necessary at the table, as all those not from here knew and understood that imperatives ruled, and no one would break from his or hers, and could not be moved or forced to do so, at least not at that table. It did seem, at least to those of us LPGC representative, that it did not take long for the human attendees to get the hang of things and move comfortably within the topology of the relating exchanges. As one expressed it at the end of one such presentation then, it was not difficult to see through the strategy. Obviously, attendees from these other human groups were not impressed by the promises and enticements. Topological thinking. One of the areas in which we receive considerable coaching is in the development of what is now known as topological thinking. In more ways than one, this seems to be the next stage in the evolution of our consciousness. Topological thinking can best be conceptualized as a kind of deployment of the natural intelligence of our complex, oscillating biological biomind's living matrix. Let me explain what this means. Since our appearance on the face of the earth as a sapient biokind, or what Zecharia Sitchin called Homo sapiens sapiens, we humans of Earth have been undergoing an evolution of consciousness in spurts of growth, not in a linear fashion. The working model, or the model now emerging as a result of the research done by our life physics group, indicates that this is the case. We have been undergoing a kind of evolution in our way of thinking based upon our abilities to become able and comfortable in using our own nervous system with which to manifest these evolving modes of conscious behavior. Early on, we deployed a use of our higher mental capabilities in a dualistic fashion. We behaved according to what we could manifest as whole prehension consciousness, or right hemispheric thinking, and as emerging intellectual rational thinking, or left hemispheric mental behavior. It is this stage that Julian Jaynes referred to as bicameral consciousness. We still do manifest this model of mental behavior in behaviors that result in fearful conduct, worrying, wars, lack, and so on. This is behavior driven by left hemispheric thinking, intellectually justified and buttressed by the functions and modalities of left hemispheric thinking modalities and information processing. This is a thinking mode we have come to regard as ego consciousness, or proprioceptive homo-centered consciousness. In other words, left hemispheric thinking modalities and information processing conceive of the external world as only real through the consciousness, or right hemispheric thinking, and as emerging intellectual rational thinking, or left hemispheric mental behavior. It is this stage that Julian Jaynes referred to as bicameral consciousness. We still do manifest this model of mental behavior in behaviors that result in fearful conduct, worrying, wars, lack, and so on. This is behavior driven by left hemispheric thinking, intellectually justified and buttressed by the functions and modalities of left hemispheric thinking modalities and information processing. This is a thinking mode we have come to regard as ego consciousness, or proprioceptive homo-centered consciousness. In other words, left hemispheric thinking modalities and information processing conceive of the external world as only real through the senses, and that its body consciousness is the boundary to its sense of reality. Anything beyond it is not certain to be real, unless the left hemispheric intellectual derivation of what is real is buttressed by some aspect of its information processing of the external event. To a person who thinks in this fashion, UFOs don't exist unless one lands in front of him or her. Even a flash appearance of one in the skies that lasts a short while may be explained away or denied, depending upon how the person's intellectual handling of the information processed. Extraterrestrial groups on and around near Earth space are aware of the prevalence of this thinking modality in human beings. Therefore, members of these different groups encourage, advance, boost, further, and promote us to develop topological thinking. So what is it? And how does it work? To explain, I am going to use both left hemispheric and right hemispheric language, and then I am going to mix them up into a fluid explanation. In the former language set, left hemispheric, it would be, using computation metaphors, being able to multitask fluidly both in serial and parallel fashions at the same time. By fluidly, I mean that one is able to easily slip initially from one information set into another, then another without discomfort, but in an additive fashion. In right hemispheric explanation, for every information set you slip into, you add that into the RAM memory set of your being and are able to remember what was processed in sequence, from one to the next to the next set, and then also be able to detect, decode, and quickly decipher relationships between the information sets, elements thereof, and connect these quickly and effortlessly, reaching and gaining new knowings as one goes forward in thinking in the given flow. So we don't think about, we think in the flow something that never seems to end, but from which we can disconnect from to begin or enter into another flow. As one grows in the modality, i.e., becomes comfortable and at ease in the flow, one is able to retain most, if not all, of the processes previously undergone while already in the next flow. How is this possible? It is because memory ceases to be exclusively a biochemical process and extends into photonic memory. We are able to store memories in what we now refer to as our Meissner fields, the photonic field that surrounds our bodies, on the currents that flow through the surfaces of our cells, even in the static charge in our cells themselves. One must take into consideration that for every electrical charge in our bodies, there are magnetic fields off any tissue at 90 degrees from its surface. These fields are both energy and information. That is, our cells and our Meissner fields are capable of also carrying an information bandwidth and all electrical currents that also produce magnetic fields. All extraterrestrial groups on and in Earth near space have this capacity, and we need to develop it as well. Can we? Of course, we can. Humans have already started to develop these capacities, some with assistance of energetic technologies that are capable of inducing a greater connectivity between neurons, increasing the neuronal capacity for information processing, but only in the central nervous system, cortical areas of the brain, while others with soft technologies of intelligence acceleration that are slowly coming out into the public domain. A topological thinking modality will allow you to grasp most, if not all, of what I am saying without any problems, getting the connections between the various concepts in the flow. It is this that is elsewhere referred to as a technology of intelligence acceleration. Topological thinking then becomes the centerpiece of our new imperative. Without it, not much of what else we need to become may be fully connected in your mind to grasp where, collectively, we have to move toward. In terms of developing the abilities to connect with those who are not from here, it is necessary to realize early on that to grasp and get who, what, why, and where they are coming from may not be complete on our part without this new thinking modality. These people have not only the advantage of possessing topological thinking as a matter of course, but also have the capacity of mind-on-mind resonance via the use of extremely low frequency ranges to connect themselves mentally to us and to others. In their cases, most of this is done with assistive technologies, some of which I am told we have retro-engineered for ourselves, working forward in modifications to the initial Flanagan device. Should we then move toward developing topological thinking? We must. It is now not a choice of if, but a choice of when. There is also the expectation that those who choose not to may well be left behind, isolated, and disconnected. We are already seeing the effects of that choice in our own ranks.